everyone, thanks for tuning in. It's European Stories from a Union of Volunteers. Today's guest is from Italy. It's Gianluca. He did his ESC in Portugal 3 years ago, and now he is studying international relationship. So welcome, Gianluca. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So jumping in directly in our first question. How did you come across the European Solidarity Corps?
Well, that's something, that happened, I would say, a bit random. I had just finished my high school and I was looking for some new experiences. And actually, first I was working in Greece for a few months in an hotel, in an international, sort of camping. And then I decided that, I wanted to spend some more time in Europe, but actually doing something that was a bit more connected to my field of study. I was thinking about studying international relations. I wanted to do something intercultural. And so I found, an organization that was based in my city in Turin, in the northwest of Italy. I knew them, from before, but I never had the chance to actually do any activity with them. And then, they were proposing this project in Portugal, and it was the European Youth Capital year for Cascais, where I did my EVS. So, I really felt it was something that could match my interest and something I was looking for. Then I decided to apply, and I got selected. So I started, and I had my EVS there.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. And did you also apply for other projects?
I actually did. A few months before, there was a project, a short-term EVS in Turkey, and I liked the idea of doing a short-term EVS because I could do only 2 months and understand a bit how those dynamics were, and afterwards I could have still done the longer term, but it would have left me maybe different opportunities after to do anything else I wanted really. But I was a bit unsure about that. My parents probably were not really in favor of doing that kind of project. I could bring a lot of reasons, but I guess maybe that's also destiny, and I didn't go there. But when I see the project in Portugal, I think that was the project that fit me. There was another one in Barcelona about more project management and working in a sort of an office of an organization. But if I look back, I think still there was an experience that was right for me in that moment.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember how it was before you went to Portugal? Like, do you have any specific memories? How were the last days in Italy?
Well, actually, sometime random coincidence, I think. But, I left for Portugal on the 6th of February and my birthday is the 5th of February, so the day before. So it was also a chance to, actually do something with the family. I had time, to say goodbye in a way, to some friends. So it was actually a good coincidence, because for me it was sort of a closing a cycle. I had just turned 20. So it was like, I'm sort of ready for new experiences, and obviously you feel a bit of pressure, I guess, like everybody. But then you know that you have taken the decision to go there to do that sort of experiences, and you want to start. I think once you arrive there, you can understand much more about the experience, how it's going to be.
All right, and then you arrived in Portugal. What was the first impression when you arrived?
Well, actually, it was sort of something I was expecting, to find a place and a culture that was not very different from the Italian one, and that matched my expectation, because people were really friendly. It was very sunny. It was February, but it was very sunny, very warm, and I loved the environment, and I think the place was also very, very, very cool, overall, because a lot of young people, really. I think that's one of the reasons why they were picked as European Youth Capital, because a lot of youth organizations were there. And the people in the hosting organization were actually, they came to pick us up at the airport, and the house where we were staying, with the other volunteers was really, really nice, very close to the beach as well. I mean, the first impression was really positive. I think it's a sort of a dream place for many people. I cannot say anything about that.
That's so cool. And how big is the city where you stayed? Like, how many people live there?
Actually, Cascais is a bit particular, I think, because it's one municipality, but they have sort of different fractions. There is Cascais as the city, and I think overall it has around 250,000 inhabitants. But then there are close, I would say, fractions. One of them is Estoril. I don't know, maybe some people heard of it. There is a famous casino and other stuff, but they also had like a Grand Prix of Formula One a few decades ago. But actually, it's a place where it's very close to Lisbon, which is a very big European capital. but it's not that little anyway, you know. So even if you stay just in Cascais and the surrounding areas, you can go to Sintra, which is also very close. It's a beautiful place. I think it has, you know, that dimension where you have things to do. If you want to go to a big city, you can, but you know, it's still very, very enjoyable.
And how did you communicate? Could you communicate in Italian, English, or did you even catch up some Portuguese?
I guess I this is my first looking back. This is maybe something that I regret a bit. You know, it was not so much on us, I guess, to actually being able to improve our Portuguese. But I regret a bit that I, you know, I could have done a bigger effort to learn and to practice Portuguese, because overall, yes, we were in sort of the framework of the European Youth Capital, but really, you know, many activities were done in English. And when there was no international activities, you know, people were speaking Portuguese because they had a lot of, you know, young residents volunteering there. Yes, they could speak English. I think that's something very positive about Portugal, because a lot of people speak English very well, especially, you know, the youth, I guess. But you know, there was this traumatic experience in a way, because also inside the organization, since other volunteers were coming from really different cultures, you know, there was a girl from Northern Ireland, and she grew up actually in Portugal a few years back, so she could speak a bit. But then there was a girl from Slovenia and a guy from Estonia, who was like Russian mother tongue, and they were very far, you know, in linguistic family in a way. So for them, I think it was very tough. We only stayed there for 5 months, and maybe that was a factor why I didn't practice and improve my Portuguese so much. So I regret a bit of that, but you know, I learned something, and I came back to Portugal this year. I had the chance to speak a bit, and it's still useful, you know. But mostly was English, definitely.
And how was your accommodation? Where did you live and with whom did you live?
Yeah, actually, the flat was, I would say, maybe not incredible, but was still very, very nice. Maybe one thing I would have loved to be a little different is actually the spaces, because you know, we were sharing a room which was not that big. So in terms of also maybe privacy that you would love to have, or you would prefer to have, that may be something, you know, if each volunteer can have its own room, I think sometimes it's nice as well. But it was not a big deal. The place was really, like, you know, comfortable. I think it was very modern. We had a nice living room where actually we had chances to gather and eat together sometime, and to have some guests as well. You know, my sister came to visit. She could have, you know, she slept there as well. So there was space also for hosting people. And you know, the colleagues, in terms of, you know, the other volunteers living with me, I guess something this is something that happens, like, I believe, like 99% of the time. You know, the volunteers who are involved in the same project you are probably are living with you as well. And so I guess, you know, one thing I would suggest is, maybe if you have the chance to actually, if not, you know, not to split them necessarily, but sometimes even to have a little bit more of detachment, because when you work together at the same time, you also live together. And sometimes, you know, it can be overwhelming, it can be a bit too much. But you know, I can't say that, you know, I would blame my volunteers, because sometimes we had discussion. I think it was, sometimes it was my fault, sometimes maybe we didn't understand each other very well, so there was not a very clue, you know, a good flow of communication in a way. But it happens. I mean, I would say we could all do things differently if we go back in time, but we cannot. It's 3 years ago, and I think it was anyway a good learning experience.
Yeah, of course. And maybe the most interesting, what did you actually do in your project?
Well, I think there's a difference there between what I was supposed, or we were supposed to do, and what we have done in the end. What we were supposed to do, I think, most of the activities should have been connected to the European Youth Capital, meaning international events, workshop, hosting maybe other organization that wanted to go a little bit more European. So you know, it should have been a hub for creativity, and in a way, you know, actually to gather the best that European youth field could offer. And I think, you know, that was the idea of it. You know, once you have this title, you can do a lot of different things with it, but probably, you know, one of the goal you have is to actually become a reference point, at least for the year. What we have done is, I would say, you know, we have done some activities related to that. We had a couple of training courses. One was hosted by national agencies. There were some others, you know, from organization active in Erasmus Plus and in what was starting to be the European Solidarity Corps program. But overall, I think, you know, most of the time we spent more in the organization, the hosted organization, doing office work. We have been working on a digital blog for a while, which is something I like to do, and we learned a bit, how to do photograph, a bit of video editing. So there were different tasks, but I guess that in terms of expectation, it really didn't match the original expectation, because we probably were supposed to do something different, more in terms of events management and international activities. Probably that were not enough, or maybe we were too many, because when you are 4 volunteers, maybe you need to split. Two of them are involved in more in the international events part, and two others need to do back office, and that's how it is.
What did you like the most about volunteering and your work as a volunteer?
Well, what I like the most, I think that I was in a beautiful place, and even though I had some lows moments, I still learned a lot from from that experience. The first thing that comes to my mind is being independent. So you need to actually care about everything, about your life, from washing your clothes to go to the supermarket enough times to actually have everything there you need, and you cook your meals. You need to schedule your day depending on what you need to do, and your tasks. So I think being independent and actually sort of being able to decide for my daily life, my daily routine, was something that really made me grow. So I think that was the very positive part. Something that probably was not that positive is that I was not so much aware that, as I am right now, I believe, on how to fix things that were not going as planned. I was reacting to those, but I think sometimes I didn't have a clue on actually how to deal with them. Maybe we should have established sort of a communication flow that was more effective. Maybe we needed to actually sit around the table, more frequently, and actually discuss how to solve some stuff. For some things that we didn't like about the activities, maybe we waited too long, to actually bring them up, and sort of telling also the organization, the hosting organization, the coordinating organization, maybe there's something that needs to be fixed, and maybe we waited a little bit more time. We were hoping that things would change naturally, but many times things don't go this way. You need to act, and you need to do something about those, and yeah, that's a big learning anyway.
But that's a great learning effect, what you mentioned, like taking the initiative and be proactive. And I think it's a good way to learn it. And then if you have some events which really stays in your mind also afterwards, that's a great chance. So even though there are challenges, you always learn out of them. Maybe not at this moment, but afterwards for sure. Now, let's imagine you're at dinner with some friends of yours and they're interested in hearing your experiences. And which maybe crazy story would you tell them?
Well, we did a trip, with the other volunteers, even though the atmosphere inside the house was a bit stressful, as I could say, but we had this chance, because a couple of months before we found very cheap flights, so we decided to go this weekend in Azores, which are the island, in sort of west Atlantic of Portugal. And it was a fantastic adventure. So I think if I would be sitting today around the table with friends, besides saying, overall how the experience was, I think those 3-4 days that we had in Azores were fantastic, because the nature there is incredible. We rented a car. Every day we changed camping, but we also slept, in a very characteristic Airbnb. The food was fantastic, and actually, it was really like detachment a bit from the daily life as volunteers. There it could have, we were probably more free, and we were more like independent on the project. And really, I have very, very positive memory of that trip. And even though the last night we were very late and we couldn't find the camping open, so we actually slept in the car. So I think that was a bit of my crazy story, in a way. Not that crazy, I'm sure there are much more crazy stories around Europe from volunteers, but I would say that experience sort of gave me the extra energy for the last month and a half of my project, and very nice always to bring that back.
I would like also to go there, but maybe not this year, maybe not the next year. Anyways, and then you came back to Italy. And how was your situation? How was your life when you returned back to Italy? How was your first days in Italy back?
As everybody, I guess. So I I think I see myself a lot in the people that have this sort of a bit traumatic experience, because you just ended a very intense emotional experience. So you go home and you don't know exactly what to do with your life, I guess, unless you have already very certain direction. But I think it was not my case. When I came back, it was less than 2 months from the university year starting, and at that point, I think I knew that I wanted to start in international relations in my hometown. But then, I love international project. I love the Erasmus Plus dimension, and I knew that, I wanted to be involved there. So I actually had the chance 2 weeks after being back in Italy to go to Austria for a basic synergy program. I don't know if you have heard of it, but it's sort of like a personal development program shaped as a training course, as a youth exchange. And there is, I cannot spoil much because actually I think that's the beauty of it. And and one of the rules that make them promise, you cannot spoil a lot of things as they happen in the training. But ideally you have this training the first days, you work inside, you work individually, you work as a group, and you do some weird activities that I think really bring you out from your comfort zone. But then you also have a couple of days spent outside without some resources. It's a very cool experience. So that one really shaped me, pushed me again to say, I think anyway I learned something in the time in Portugal, because now that I did these experiences and I was challenged even further, probably I know, I can realize some things better. And then I am still looking for exactly what I want to do. So I think it's a process that never stops. Even 3 years are passing by, but I'm still in the youth field. So I think that the experience still like gave me something. In I like this sector. I like international projects. I want to be involved.
So cool. Did you also know it before you went to Portugal, what you would like to do, or that you would like to study international relationship or so on? Or?
I don't know actually. I would lie saying I remember perfectly. Before going there, I knew. I think I had an idea of being international field or either political science. But for example, there was a possibility that I could have gone studied abroad. I didn't exclude it because I think, yeah, you're home. If you're in your hometown, you have very low expenses because you can still live with your parents and you know the city. But it's a big and very powerful experience as well to think, maybe I can challenge myself and go to a different place. And I think that's what happened. But yeah, during the time in Portugal, probably because I was far from my home, and I felt that probably sometimes I needed a little bit more of time with friends and family. I guess that was a factor that said, I can do the bachelor degree here in Italy, and then maybe after I will go abroad.
That sounds great. And you mentioned you're still active in this European youth work field. What are your current projects?
Well, I've done a lot of things, I would say, but you never stop learning. One thing I'm really honored to do in a way. I have been involved as youth delegate to the Congress of Local and Regional Authorities of the Council of Europe, which is outside the European Union field, but for actually last year and still 2021, because of the pandemic, we have the possibility to actually to interact with a lot of decision makers. We help them, and give our contribution to reports. They just passed recently a report on youth work. So actually that is a very fantastic experience because there is also the political and diplomatic side. But more in terms of project, I'm now executive director of a network which is based on the co-management principle. We have young people and youth organization, where young people are sort of the young European ambassador, where they also tell their experiences. So it's very similar, I would say, in a way to Europeans and USN, the networks. But we also have youth organization involved, so we try to improve the quality of the programs that they realize. So there is this strong networking experience that I think is very beneficial for all the stakeholders in the field. And I'm specifically active with Key Action 3 projects, dialogue between young people and decision makers, to bring the European youth goals in Italy, to bring the good practices from the European framework to local and regional authorities, which I think is something very missing in Italy, and not only in Italy. So I think there's so much to do, and one thing I find very motivating for me is that if you really have an idea of what you want to do, and you manage to bring some other passionate young people with you in the journey, you will find support. You can win project, you can actually implement activities, and those boost you. Your energy is scaling up. Every year you can add a piece, and you can make the circle bigger in terms of the people you involve. I still don't find the end of the tunnel, and that's why I'm still very motivated into it.
It's very impressive. So I wish you all good luck for all future upcoming projects.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are slowly coming to the end of this episode, and here are our 3 closing questions. How would you describe your volunteering project in one word?
Challenging. Challenging, yes.
All right, yes, I think it doesn't need further explanations. What is the one thing you miss from volunteering?
I miss the fact that there was a strong interaction. So if it should be one word, I would say interactions, because even though, you also feel the opposite sometimes, like you want to be a little bit more with yourself. But what we are living right now is very, far from interaction and from what I remember being a volunteer. So I think that's was something I miss.
And the last very broad question, you can answer in more than word, of course. What does solidarity mean to you?
I think especially because it's what's happening right now. For me, solidarity is sort of a principle that I want to have in my life. So I feel that, being and transmitting solidarity to others is something that if you have the chance to do it and you think you have the passion and the motivation to do it is fundamental. But I think it's something that cannot, not exist in a way. We need solidarity, and not only to help people with fewer opportunities and those that, don't know about many opportunities that they can take advantage of, but it's because our society is still, unbalanced, and there are people who have the luck, or, the yeah, I would say the luck in a way, and maybe the merit to have done something, to have accomplished something, and then it's up to you, actually to give back, and I think that's about solidarity for me as well. And there is a lot of stories about solidarities, and I think we need to invest more time to share this solidarity with others.
Thank you. So, by these very well said words by Gianluca, we are going to close this episode. Thank you very much to everyone who listened to this episode. Thank you very much, Gianluca, for your time.
Thank you very much, Paula, for having me. It was very, very nice.
And then we will hear us next week again with Jose. Until then, bye bye.
Bye bye. Ciao.